Well, welcome everyone to TMI Advice You Didn't Want. Today we're going to talk about one of those sticky situations that just gets all of your hair riled up on your head and you just can't stand a certain person. And what do you do about that? In case we haven't met, my name is Karin Angelly. I'm one of your co-hosts here, and we're gonna have a lot of fun figuring out how to deal with difficult situations. How's that?
Mhm. That sounds good. My name is Ashley, and I've had a lot of fun, difficult situations, as we probably all have. And how I used to deal with it is very different to how I'm currently dealing with it. And I think actually diving into both and kind of
Yeah.
evaluating and dissecting them. Like for me, even in school, um, I had a lot of friends. Like I was technically the popular kid kind of thing. And
Which is hilarious because I was the weirdo.
I was still the weirdo, and people like I wasn't like for the majority, I did a little bit of partying, but for the majority of like or all of grade 7 through grade 12, no partying. I went to parties and all that kind of stuff. And my friends constantly like, you're so weird and crazy. You
I
should
love it.
definitely get drunk so we can see what you're like, or get high so we can see what you're like. And I didn't do any of it. Um, but I was definitely like weirder than the people that were doing the alcohol and the
Oh, me
drugs.
too. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
always the one that was like completely in their own world, like everywhere all the time, hyperactive. Like I just wanted to play and have fun all day, and people were like, "What are you like when you get high or drunk?" And I'm like, "Who knows?" I don't care because I'm having fun without it.
Exactly. Yeah. I was dancing on the tables, but I
Yes.
haven't had a shot yet.
Yep, and I have definitely done that before too.
Yes,
And I don't know how
exactly.
to dance.
Me either. Well, I'm okay, but I'm not like good. I have no rhythm.
Yeah,
I
I,
grew up in dance classes, but I couldn't go very far because I have no rhythm. So,
that's funny.
anyways, I could that could be a little tangent, but I won't go there. So I always avoided it. Like
Mm,
if someone was like, I don't like you, like you're this, this, and this, I'm like, cool, bye. And I always had tons of friends, so it didn't really matter. Like it didn't feel like I was losing. I was really good at just like shaking it off. It doesn't matter, and moving on to a different group of friends or whatever it was. So that was my way of dealing with it in the past. And even like, so I've gone through a divorce. And when I went through that divorce, I was like, okay, changing my whole friend group. Like that did not work for me. And they're all associated with him. And I need a clean break. And I literally would just like completely change everyone I
mm,
surrounded myself with. And I've done that multiple times in my life where it was just like new level, new group of people. And I think that was partially really healthy, but also like I was really quick to just be like, okay, I'm done. Like you rubbed me the
yeah.
wrong way. No second chances, no forgiveness. I'm moving on.
Mm,
So yeah, so that was the old way I used to process and deal with things. So
I
I don't
think,
know if you have.
honestly, I think that that can be really common.
Mhm.
For me, I don't work that way because I'm like, if you're my friend, I want to figure this shit out. Like
Mhm.
that's just how I am. But I know that I had a friend, and we've talked about this before together, you and I, Ashley, where I had a friend that she does that, where she's like, you've wronged me. I'm done with you forever. And like, she just stopped talking to me altogether. And I was just like, what happened? Because I'm the
Mhm.
person that's like, I want to figure this out. Let's have a normal conversation, like that kind of thing. But I
Mhm.
do understand, like, being like, okay, well, this doesn't work. So I'm just going to walk away from it completely. But one thing that I've discovered is the more that you just walk away from it, it's like, did you learn what you
Mhm.
needed to learn when you just walk away and you don't
Yeah.
actually like try and have those difficult conversations?
Mhm.
Um, because those aren't easy at the end of the day. And sometimes at the end of the day, sometimes the other person doesn't want to hear your side and they don't care about your side.
Yeah.
And figuring out how to be okay with that too. That's
Mhm.
not an easy thing to an easy river to cross because it's
Yeah.
like you have to be secure in the fact that, okay, well, I did everything that I did and they don't want to, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So, and that's not easy, but it's part of
No,
the
and like it wasn't that fast. Like I was someone that would take a lot
mm,
too, like before it was like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. Like this
hmm
is who you are. And in my adult life, more so like I'd have like friends in high school be like, "Oh, like why are you okay with not hanging out with us?" And I'm like, "Well, every time I do, like you want to talk about like self-harm and things like that, and that's just not my
yeah.
deal."
hmm
And when I say let's do something else, let's talk about something else, you get upset with me. So I'm just gonna go over here and not over there.
And do something
Um,
else. Yeah.
yeah, so because that was like I think it was in grade 7. That was the big drama, was that all like the more popular girls made a suicide pact. And I was just
mm,
like, yeah, I'm out, like not happening, like
hmm
I don't have those thoughts, I'm not in that, not happening. And they wanted to talk about that kind of stuff all the time, so I
Oh,
just went, and that's where I like hung out more with the guys because they weren't talking about that kind of stuff. And so the same group of friends, just more hanging out with the guys and the girls, and then they got really upset with me for doing that. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, like I want to be your friend, but I'm not engaging in that kind of activity or conversation. So I never was like, you're out of my life. Like we were small town Saskatchewan, so I like still was nice and kind and friends with them. And eventually they moved out of that phase, and then it was all great.
yeah. So, whatever.
Yeah. And then in my adult life, when things would go down, I'd be like, hey, like, let's talk about this. And I'm totally fine with confrontation. I do not run in the other direction from it. Like a lot of people are like, oh, like I don't like it. And I'm like, I'll do it just for fun sometimes.
I'm glad you don't do that with me because, like, for me, I don't think it's fun, but I know how to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where it's like I've figured out a lot. Like, I've been married to my husband for almost 15 years at this point, and so I
Yeah.
know what it takes to have good communication with somebody, and sometimes that
Yeah.
means having those confrontational conversations
Yeah.
and how to have them positively with the other person. So,
Mhm.
but it's not something I always just enjoy. I just know I've got to do this, and I have no
Yeah.
problem jumping in with both feet and going, okay, we have to talk. Like, this is a thing. So,
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I rent out my RV or different things, like whatever
yeah.
it is. And sometimes I'll get reviews and they're not great. And it's like, I interacted with you in person and over the phone. And this one situation where I like bent over backwards and did like so much for them for free out of
Mm,
my, like they wanted, because they were driving a motorcycle to the RV, so they wanted me to pack stuff for them, and they wanted a generator dropped off at my house and then for me to bring it to them. And it was like probably a 4-hour coordination with a delivery person and them, both ways. And
mm,
so did a huge thing for them, which I normally wouldn't do, and if I did, I probably would charge for it, but I was like, whatever. And then they gave me a horrible review. And those reviews
mm,
mean so much on like where you're placed. And so I was like, I don't care. I'm gonna message them. And like, cause it's all behind the screen. So I messaged them and I'm just like, hey, I thought we did really well
mhm,
at accommodating you. And I like had like coordinated a delivery on top of things and didn't charge extra and this and this and this and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I'm just curious what the lower review was about. And you can tell by their response that they're like, I didn't think you would ever ask us about that kind of thing, you know? And so I'll have those
well,
kind of situations a lot where it's like, if you feel comfortable giving me a low review after you said to my face how amazing everything was, I'm going to call you out.
I'm gonna
And
talk
that's
about
just a
it. Yeah.
random example.
hmm
And so I did that with a friend of mine, of thinking of an experience in specific, in particular. And I just said, like, hey, like, this is what this looks like. What's going on? Like, I thought this is what we agreed on. And then you
Mm,
can like feel that person be like, and they kind of like give you that tippy toe response where they know that they've wronged you, but they're going to try to find a way to blame you. And then when that stuff happens, that's when I'm like, okay, I'm out,
I see.
because
Yeah.
you can't even have this conversation that is like productive and say I'm sorry or whatever. And like, to me, apologies are so important, and like saying like, okay, I understand that's what you didn't like, kind of thing, that's so important. And if those kind of things don't happen, and they don't happen on a repeated basis, then I feel no remorse for cutting you out of my life. So
Yeah, yeah, no, I
yeah.
get it. So, I mean, like for me, um, I can't even think of how I used to because I feel like I've always kind of had this way of like dealing with sticky situations and I've gotten better. Okay, yeah, no, let me rephrase this because I have definitely gotten better at managing my self-talk in a sticky situation. So like in the
Mhm.
past, if a sticky situation happened, I would have a pretty good intuitive understanding as to how to have the conversation in a healthy way so that both parties felt heard. We could have a good conversation. I feel like that was always something that I had a good intuition about, and
Mhm.
that I always would kind of like I like figuring people out. Let's just say that. So
Yeah.
that about me has been very helpful in having like sticky situation conversations and
Mhm.
what to do. But the thing that I didn't do back then that I do now is when I have a sticky situation or had a sticky situation back then in the day, I would play it over and over and over. And I would be like, oh, I should have said this. I would have been better if I did that way. And like you change it in your brain and then you continue to have the conversation with the person in your head. That is
Mhm.
so sickening. Like literally, you are making your brain sick and
Yeah.
you are shooting all over yourself. I shoulda,
Mhm.
coulda, woulda, all over myself.
Yeah.
And you're literally just stuck in the past when you do that too. And that was like, that was something that I did all the time that
Mhm.
was literally probably the number one reason that I look back at my life and I'm like, that's the reason I would stay stuck in a lot of
Mm.
situations because I would shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah.
And I would have this like sense of beating myself up for having said something a certain way or done something a certain way.
Yeah.
Listen, Linda, like if they're going to take it negatively, that's
Mhm.
on them because I would like I can't say always because I can't always be like I was the best person all the time, but I would try and have conversations with people when I wasn't in that flared up emotional state. Like, how do
Mhm.
I have this conversation so that you can hear me and I can hear you? And
Mhm.
so I would sometimes wait until it was like, okay, I can have this conversation now. And then I would have the
Yeah.
conversation. But then after the conversation was over, it would be like, I just would beat the crap out of myself because I'm like, they didn't take that well. And I should have said this. And now they're not. I remember whenever I lost that really good friend that I had, I beat myself up for years. And I'm
Mhm.
not kidding when I say years because it
Yeah.
took me, it was like I had a boyfriend girlfriend breakup. That's how bad it was because I was just
Mhm.
like this person was important. We were like really good friends for like 4 or 5 years, like
Yeah.
inseparable, right? And then like we have this one incident and I'm like, listen, like this is what happened with me. Let's talk about it. Like let's get into it. And it was like, nope, I'm not doing that. And I beat myself up for all of the things that led up to that point where she said, nope, I'm done with you.
Yeah.
And so for me, I feel like as I've kind of progressed and gotten better with this, like I don't go through the shoulda, coulda, woulda. And when I notice that I do, I'm like, I can stop this. Like I don't have to sit here and ruminate about something that happened five hours ago, 10 days
Yeah.
ago, 5 years ago. It doesn't matter. Like it's done.
Mhm. Yeah.
What if I just look at how can I be the best version of me right
Mhm.
now for this moment instead of focusing so much on what I did in the past and what somebody's going to think of me from what I
Mhm.
did in the past. Like that would keep me stuck for a long time of what
Mhm.
other people were thinking of me because of something that happened in the past. And
Yeah.
that like when you let that go, it's just so liberating.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people really struggle with.
Hmm.
For me, that hasn't been a big thing. Like it actually took me a long time to even understand that that's where a lot of people were at. I had this one friend that would message me all the time and be like, "Oh my God, I've been up all night thinking about what I said, and I just really want you to feel like this is what I meant by it." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's how I took it.
That's
You're
how I
good."
got it. Yeah. Hmm.
And they'd be like, "Okay, okay, I haven't been able to sleep." I'm like, "What?"
I did that. I was that person.
Yeah.
I
I
was.
honestly,
I'm not anymore.
I think a lot of people are, because once that incident happened, I became more aware of that specifically, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is how a lot of people are living. And for me, I am more of a proactive warrior than a
Mm,
reactive warrior. Not that
mm.
it's better,
No,
but
yeah, neither one's
like,
great.
yeah, I'll more so be like, okay, these are the situations that could happen. So if these happen, how am I going to respond? Kind of thing. So I'm more of that kind of person. Like in the beginning of my relationship with my partner with our kids, his ex stalked us twice. And yeah, and like claimed she was in the area for something else as we're in this random commercial area for something very specific to us that no one else really would be
Hmm.
over there, especially not her. But like
Hmm.
unless she worked in like the trades or something, and still our parenting time, and she pulls up right beside us on the side of the road, and it's like, no, like that's not appropriate no matter what.
Mm-mm.
And so I used to be like, okay, I'm going to the store with the kids. I wonder what I would do if I ran into her and it's just me and the kids and Derek's not here. Like, what would I do? And I'd have those thoughts every once in a while, like, how would I respond? And so sometimes it's okay. Like, I feel like sometimes it set me up for situations where I'm like, oh, I'm ready because I've already like
Hmm.
had this thought
Yep.
process in my head.
Yep.
So I don't have that thought process of like, oh my God, I was surprised and I wasn't ready and I reacted this way and I should have reacted this way.
Hmm.
So it has helped me out of a few of those kind of situations. But I think if it's excessive, it's
Hmm.
always going to be unhealthy. So there's a couple of times where, because I didn't think about it every time we went somewhere because that would be too much. But there was a couple of times where I'm like, hey, like we don't care. We're not thinking about that anymore. And would have to like push it away. So yeah. Another thing like I do now, so like we've talked about how we have those hard conversations when we have to with people that are important to us, because otherwise you're just not really learning and you're cutting people out and
Hmm.
you're essentially isolating yourself. You're creating a you island.
Yeah.
um but there's people like my partner's ex and my children's mother that I can't have a normal conversation with.
Yeah.
And to me, like out of my training, the biggest indicator of if you're having like a normal conversation is if you ask a question, are they answering it in your box? I don't
Mm.
know if you've ever heard that analogy
Mm-mm.
before, but it's like if you were to say like, hey, what color is the sky right now? And you go, oh, the grass is rectangular. It's like, what? Like,
Excuse me? Yeah. Mm.
yeah.
Mhm. That's not
And
what I asked.
yeah, yeah. And so, but people do that when they don't have emotional maturity
Mhm.
and emotional intelligence, or they literally just can't. Like, and I think there are people like that, like narcissists just can't. And there's other types of people too, where it's just like their brain won't connect. And I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but it'll be like I ask her a question about this topic and it's like, oh, this thing over here
Yeah.
from 6 months ago was all your fault. I was like,
Okay.
okay,
Thanks.
cool, sure, but let's go here. Like, we're going to talk about this. And if you can't, after multiple rewording and asking proper questions and effective questions and get them into that box, you're never going to be able to communicate with them. There
Yeah.
is some kind of block, and it can be like emotional intelligence, narcissism, jealousy, hatred, whatever.
Hmm.
Like there's so many reasons. And so that is my relationship with her. Like it's like
Mm.
we can't answer questions into the same box.
Mm.
So what I have started to do is to talk to her on a soul level. And is it effective always? No, because she still is who she is in her like flesh and bone.
Mhm.
And there is that aspect. But I do notice like the times that I take more energy and more intention and more like being present to talk to her at a soul level before we have to interact or before I send a text message, it usually is a little bit more in flow and a little bit closer to that box.
Yeah.
So,
So explain what you mean to people that are like, what does it mean to talk to somebody on a soul level? Like, explain what you do.
yeah. And like, honestly, like, there's probably a lot of people that make it very woo woo and
Hmm.
like this is the formula and you have to
Hmm.
have 6 candles lit and
Oh my God. I think that we get so stuck in our freaking traditions and how things
yeah,
have to be that it's like, friggin' stop it. Everything
yeah,
is energy.
yeah.
Calm down.
And like I am definitely one of those people that will like I love my rocks and I love my incense and I
Sure. Nobody said
love
you
all that
can't.
stuff.
Yeah. Nobody
And
said you
I
can't.
do enjoy the like reassurance of a ritual and all that kind of stuff. But let's be honest, life doesn't really give us a lot of opportunity to do that in the hustle and bustle. And
No.
so sometimes I'm like walking out the door talking to her as I'm like driving towards her. Sometimes I've pulled up and been like, oh, shoot, I need to quickly do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So what do you do?
um,
Like, what's the thing that you're
yeah.
like, this is what I do?
Yeah, so I honestly just like envision her in my head in front of me. And I say to her, like, I'm coming to you on a soul level, like my soul to your soul in our purest form. And I want to communicate with you that we are doing this out of light and love for the best and highest good of our children. And that whatever interaction we have today, it is not focused on me and you, it is focused on them.
Them. Yeah.
And that we are able to put aside whatever, like our animosity, our like whatever, and that this interaction is a soul interaction for the highest good of our kids.
Hmm.
Like that easy, something along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
think, I think we forget how much of a creator that we are because
mhm,
we have been, and like I say this, and I know Ashley, sometimes you're like, I don't get that word, but like, I feel
mhm,
like we've been completely blinded by the illusion of this world.
mhm,
And what I mean by that is that we miss out on the fact that we've created it by what
mhm.
we're thinking and feeling, and the feeling be the most important thing on that soul level. Like, what are we thinking and feeling right here, right now? That's what's creating our possibility for our future, our everything that we see in this world. And so,
Yeah.
when you talk about talking to somebody on a soul level like that, like some people will be like, well, that seems kind of ridiculous, but what does that do for your energy? Like, let's just talk about that alone. If it did nothing else, you having that conversation in your head gets you into a good feeling place because you know what your intention is. And
Yeah.
intention, in my opinion, is literally what creates at the end of the
Mhm,
day. That intention, that feel good intention every time you connect with her,
mhm.
even though you're like, we can't really have a civil, normal conversation,
Yeah.
you're actually connecting in a way with yourself that makes it so that you can be more present. And I think that
Mhm.
that's beautiful. I love that you do that. So,
Yeah, and it also puts in the possibility of normalcy.
yeah,
Because like if I'm talking to like you, like who she is just everything that I'm not
right,
about. And
right.
so I don't like things that I'm not about.
Yeah, that's pretty normal for a lot of
Yeah.
us.
And so when I think about interacting with her or dealing with her, it's just like, I have to deal with this person that is about everything that I hate.
Yeah.
And so it is really hard. And to see the abuse that is inflicted onto my children
Mm.
makes it so it's like so much more fiery hatred.
Mm-hmm.
And so by doing that, it calms down my animosity that, oh, okay, like there is probably, we don't know for sure, like I do believe there are beings on this earth that do not have a soul, but I am gonna guess that probably she does have one, and at the core we are all connected. And
Mm-hmm.
so if I can keep interacting with that part of her, then maybe there's a possibility that one day the kids get the best version of us together.
Yeah.
So it gives it a hope, it gives it a possibility.
Yeah.
And so it just tones everything down for me as well. But
Yeah. And it makes you like I said, it makes you more present
yeah,
because you're like, this is how I'm going to enter in this situation.
yeah,
Instead of like, it's that proactive thinking that you were talking
mhm,
about.
yeah,
Instead of rushing into a situation and then going, oh crap, I'm
hmm,
not ready for this. Like, I know one of my favorite teachers is Dr. Joe. I've talked about it before, and he talks about mental rehearsal in
hmm,
like
yeah,
that positive way of mentally rehearsing what is it
hmm,
that you have been doing and that how do you actually want to respond instead. And so
yeah,
what you just did where it's like, well, this is
hmm,
how I have been responding to her, but that's not really effective. It's not really getting the job done. We're not communicating. So
hmm,
at the end of the day, when you have sticky situations like that and you're like, I just can't talk to this person, the only
yeah,
energy you can control is you.
yeah,
And like for a lot of people that are listening, this might be a lot of TMI advice you didn't want, but the
mhm,
truth is that you are creating that reality out there. So
yeah,
you get to control your energy in the situation. And that is literally the only thing
yeah,
that you can control.
hmm,
Everything else out there, that, yes, it's a direct correlation of what you're thinking and feeling. So
hmm,
if you want to control it, think and feel something different. Like, I mean, it's not rocket science, but it isn't easy. Let's be honest. Like, it's
yeah,
not a difficult formula to be like, change your thoughts and feelings. But it's also the reason it's so difficult for us to do that is because our subconscious brain can be a little fucker sometimes. Let's be
hmm,
honest. Because we have
yep,
these programs that have been running since
yeah,
we were children because we saw life in a different way when we were children. And
hmm,
so we're raised in a certain way. We start to believe certain things, and those subconscious programs get stuck in there. And we
yeah,
think that this is how things should, air
hmm,
quotes, be done. And
yeah,
when they don't get done the way that we think it should be done, we can
yeah,
sometimes go, "Ooh, I didn't like that." And then our little 5-year-old comes out that was
mhm,
hurt
yeah,
by this kind of event that happened to them when they were 5 years old. Now it's happening again.
yeah,
And here's the thing, like when you start to notice those subconscious patterns that you developed over
hmm,
time and you start going, nope, like you literally have this thought. Like I literally think of like, I don't know, I feel like you're a Lord of the Rings fan.
hmm,
But I think of Gandalf where he's like, none shall pass. That's what I think about when I'm thinking about my thoughts that I'm like,
yeah,
yeah, that's not serving me. And I literally have that thought in my head where it's like, nope, we're
yeah,
done with you. That's
hmm,
not serving me anymore. And I can
yeah,
tell you, like, there was something that happened. It was over the weekend, and it was kind of like, I don't really know what to do with this. But I
hmm,
realized that the situation that I had been in, the other person was judging me from their point of view,
yeah,
but they weren't actually looking at it from my point of view because they at the end of the day really can't fully see my point of view because I haven't lived my life.
hmm,
So at that point I can choose to go, you know what, like you're allowed to have your own opinions, but I think I'm pretty awesome.
yeah,
Like, and that's not me being arrogant, that's not me being having like this narcissistic personality. It's just me going, actually no, I'm source, you're source. I'm divine, you're divine. We're
hmm,
both allowed to discover
Yeah.
this source inside of us, this source in this world in our
Mhm.
own personal way. And it
Yeah.
may not be the same way that we do it. And I am okay with that.
Mhm.
And then allowing those words that are said to us, just realizing that that's coming from their fear. And it
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily mean that that's who you are. I think
Yeah.
this is one of the biggest reasons that I realized at a certain point that mentors are helpful, but they're not the one and only.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
at the end of the day, when you get that self awareness and you can actually start truly evaluating for yourself, like what's going on with your own thoughts and feelings, and you start
Mhm.
to emotionally regulate and you start to build your emotional intelligence, you don't need anyone coaching you on the outside to do that because you become your
Mhm.
own coach at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah.
And this is probably one of the biggest reasons that I love people like Dr. Joe Dispenza because he talks about you becoming your own coach. Listening to other people on the outside, while it can be helpful, they are missing out on the very core of what's actually going inside you. And so
Mhm.
if they're missing out on all of your life experience, they don't realize your self awareness, they don't realize what's going on in you, then they can't really fully give you a direction forward. That's where you become your own rudder on a ship, right? Like you're
Yeah.
the one that now directs the way
Mhm.
that you want to go. And so
Yeah.
yes, have a mentor. That's helpful. Absolutely. But at a certain point, you get to a point where you're like, I don't need somebody to tell me what to do because
Yeah.
I've become self aware enough to actually go, is this effective or is this ineffective with what I'm doing right now? And that's
Yeah.
the
And
game changer.
yeah, I think the biggest key part to that is trusting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, having that self awareness and trusting that you
Trusting it.
are accurate in your self awareness.
Yeah.
Like, there's times where I'm like, oh, I really feel this deeply, but it's really out there. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know a lot about this specific area. And so I'll call up a coach or a mentor, and thankfully I
Sure.
do have a lot of those on standby.
Yeah.
But and then it's like they just reaffirm what I've said, or
What you
they'll say,
know.
oh yeah, that's like this. I'm like, oh yeah, I knew that. Okay. And it just kind of reaffirms that. And so it's that having that self-confidence. So like we have confidence in our mentors, but we need to make sure that we have that
Yeah.
self-confidence in ourselves. And oh, you had said something that also tied into something I was going to say. I was going to line it up so it wasn't completely out of left field, but um, it's
We
not
like
gonna work.
left field
So
though. It's fun.
yeah, it's not gonna be as beautifully like
It's okay. Let's
um
left field it.
yeah. So part of another thing that I do is so I have that conversation. And if I'm proactive enough, so like I'm still at my house or I'm not quite to the parking lot or whatever it is, I will send the light ahead of me.
Mm,
And I don't know if you've heard that term or not. I
yes.
probably, yeah. So essentially I have that conversation on a soul level, and then I send, like, I envision light, and I personally love like holographic, sparkly white light.
Mm,
And I send it, and sometimes it looks like a laser beam zooming around, and sometimes it's more like flowy, like a ribbon or a curtain. It doesn't matter. And I say that because some people are going to tell you that this is what your light needs to look like, this is the
mm-mm.
color it needs to be, and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter. You send the light and the love ahead of you, and it basically just purifies and preps the way ahead. And so you can do that, like going into court, going into a job interview, going to exchange children with someone that you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
There's a
Do it for
lot of
anyone
ways that you can use that. Or just like, I'm going to the grocery store and let's have this beautiful,
experience. Yeah.
like, present time there. Like, keep me safe while I drive. Like, there's so many wonderful things that you can use that with. And I know some people that never get into a car without sending the light before them. I
Mm,
am not one of them. I do not
mm,
remember. I often am on like autopilot,
mm.
but that's okay. And that's another thing too. A lot of people look at these really high up like mentors, like and they're like, oh, they are so perfect. They
No.
always do like choku rei reiki around their vehicle, every time they get into a vehicle and an airplane and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, cool if you do,
Yeah.
but it's also, it's in you.
Mhm.
Like for me, I rarely do choku rei around my whole vehicle. I do occasionally, but I also have this knowing that I am safe and I am protected, and my dogs are safe and they're protected, and my kids are safe and they're protected, my partner is safe and he's protected. And I know that I don't need to do the thing every single time I get into a vehicle because I'm always protected. So
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing it because this is just my thought on it. If you're doing it because you want to be more present,
mhm.
please do it, because that if we had more people in this world that were present to their current moment and weren't thinking about the past or thinking about the future, I think our world would just be a totally different place, to be completely
Mhm.
honest. Like if we
Yeah,
had more people that knew how to get back into the present moment,
yeah,
we would not have the issues that we do. We wouldn't have the communication issues. We wouldn't have war. We wouldn't have people hacking you on the computer. Like, we wouldn't have all this stuff because people would feel more whole. That's
mhm.
just a side effect of
Yeah,
becoming more present, is that
mhm.
you start to feel more whole at the end of the
Yeah,
day. And so if you're doing that kind of stuff where you're like, I want to put this energy around my car, do it
mhm.
because it gives you that presence, not because you feel like you have to do a ritual every time you get into your car.
Yeah.
Like that for me is the miss.
Well, and the miss also is if it's disrupting your life. You
Yeah.
know, some
Yeah.
people use spirituality as a way to control their life
Yeah.
and be perfect. Like, oh, like I have my 9 red candles and I light them every morning, and my house is set up and I have everything perfectly feng shuied and I have this crystal here and this crystal there. Oh, don't touch it, you know? And it's
Ah, you'll put your energy in it.
yeah. And so it's not a thing of like flow, it's a thing of like strangle control. And we find that in many addictions. And a lot of people find that in religion. And that's where you get like intensely
Yeah.
crazy churches and whatever. But it also can be in the crazy people that are burning incense with
Yeah.
mirrors all over their house, and like everything has to be perfect or they're not spiritual. You
Yeah.
know, and it's all
Yeah.
just a facade.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love this conversation. I feel like we should continue this conversation on another podcast. But for today, I think we're going to call this one a wrap because we covered a lot of really good stuff. I feel like we had a lot of really good tidbits in there. I
Mhm.
personally just love that you're like, I talk to this difficult person on a soul level. Like, if you are not taking notes on that one, you should, people, because that
Mhm.
was good stuff right there. So, but if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and smash that subscribe button, first of all, and then like this video. That helps us create more content just for you. And we want to know what it is that you want to hear us talk about as well, too. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, please give us a 5 star if you're loving what you're hearing, because that helps us as well. So, with that, I think we're going to call TMI Advice You Didn't Want a wrap for today. So, we will see everyone next time.
Awesome. Look